react. You whispering my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home. Begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating yet. My legend's written in the stone, yeah. You're crying age, in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, yeah. First round, fifth round, final round. No, 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 no. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a buzz. Oh, oh,
Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to downtime. I know we've been switching out all of the things. Now it says Operator Starsky there. We don't have our regular fireplace. I'm going to get to that. I was a little behind, and I was just talking with Lance about that too. So it's the kids got off of school. This is their first week home, and it's awesome being able to spend this kind of time with them. I'm trying to spend more time with them because my eldest is going into high school, and I'm like, oh my God, things are changing. But it's also like I have things I gotta do and meetings and all this other shit, and it's been anyways. Sorry, I was late as always, so I'll get all that sorted. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Through
good.
all the exciting stuff of the holidays.
So we had actually a couple of things to talk about, and I'm actually not in the live chat just yet. I want to go in there and say hi to people, and also said I'd notify some people when we started, which I haven't done. Apologies, very late. I left Commander McMillan waiting in the lobby for 20 minutes. So apologies to all of you for that. So we had a couple of things that we were thinking about discussing. One of...
It wasn't boring being locked in the room by myself there. I had a great conversation with a person that was just absolutely brilliant.
Oh, and tell her I think she's brilliant too. If
No, I
you
meant
don't,
the echo of me talking.
oh, you
to
meant the
myself.
echo. I thought you meant the spouse. Which, to be quite honest, I'm all for buttering her up as much as possible because she lets you come on these streams with us. She lets you come out and play. All right, so let me just. I'm gonna fix that one. We still got that up from the previous. There you go. All right, everything looks right. Finally. So you said something about the holidays. Are you still recovering, or what's the holidays? And the fourth wasn't a bad one, but yeah.
So on, can't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday. Had a problem with the septic system, so I went down to go clean the filters and everything. And as I'm trying to go down the slope, I'm going, this is really stupid. Just wait until your son gets here. He'll help you, and the two of you can get this done safely. No, I'm a strong, independent man. And I'm literally saying this out loud to myself. And that's when I trip and my leg bends backwards in the direction that legs are not meant to bend.
Mm.
So, yeah, hurts like hell. Still aches. But we did get the septic fixed, and then it's been hobbling around doing all your chores as best you can.
Yeah, sorry. It's funny.
Oh, no.
I remember as a kid, I noticed something, which was everybody the older people were, there seemed to be a correlation with the older people were, the more cranky they were. And I was just like, what is it about getting older that you just get? And I always sort of thought it was rigidity of the mind or this or that. And I'm sure that's some of it. But for me, it's been like, no, you get older and you realize the very first time you like groan getting out of bed, you're like, oh, this was a challenge, just getting myself to sit up straight from a prone position. You're like,
there you are.
Shit. Yeah, I was like, that has an impact. And then either always being in pain, either just because of getting older or whatever ailments eventually start affecting that. I was like, yeah, for me, I try to make a conscious effort not to let it get to me, but you get tired. You only got, Mowdy likes to say this. Mowdy's got a whole bunch of expressions I really like. One of them is that you only have one gas tank. We all sort of think that, okay, if you had a hard day at work, that doesn't mean that you should be stressed when you get home. It's a different set of circumstances. No, you only have one gas tank, so even though your family did nothing wrong, you might take it out on them because you're stressed about, X, Y. So I wanted to write a book called Mowdyisms, and we were serious about this. We just started collecting all the Mowdyisms. His other ones, one other one I like is that human beings are messy people. I find myself saying that all the time when they're like, okay, here's a guy who's ostensibly a good guy doing something he really shouldn't have. How do you explain it?
Don't look at my desk.
Well, it's not. Yeah, let's not look at my office too much. But he meant messy psychologically. Yeah. So you fucking troll. So nothing. Anyways, yeah. It's then what was another one? There was another one that he had said I'll buy that for $1 is another Mowdyism that he does all the time. I'm starting to like that one. I was like, I'll buy that for $1. It's like, I don't know. There's something about that expression that actually, in the right circumstances, really fucking works.
Movie.
Really?
That one's it's from a movie. And it's a cutaway that keeps occurring during the course of the movie. I think it's used in an ad with some, guy like the guy with the mattress thing, come on down, get 3 mattresses or whatever. And yeah, that's where that one comes from. Or became popularized, I should say.
So, Dave. He's on the Shills. Brit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've known him for a while. He was one of the In Time's very first guests. And we were very lucky to book him. I had actually done his show. He did the David Worley podcast, and these were interviews where people would come on. And he interviewed a couple of people that I really liked and looked up to a lot. So for me, he was like the big guy. And he did his podcast, and I really liked it, and I thought he did a great job interviewing people. It was just him interviewing people. I think he did a couple hundred of these. He ended up doing one of me because I had been known actually outside of YouTube on stuff that I could talk about. I don't think I had streamed much by that point. I wasn't a regular streamer, but I could talk about other things, so did that one. But then there was an atheist convention, a brand new convention, and they were booking everybody. They had like major Dawkins, what's his name, the guy, Universe from Nothing, physicists, the whole 9 yards. Everybody was going to be there. And so he interviews like their one of their PR guys about, this was just when Krause had gotten into some of his trouble, and he said, so what are you guys doing about this? How are you going to handle the fact that Krause is into all this sexual harassment stuff? And the guy was drunk. I hope he was drunk. I really hope for his sake he was drunk, because if this is him normally, wow. And it blew up. All of a sudden, David was like almost a household, and he handled it perfectly. I would not have handled it that well. And he was very good. He asked just the right kind of questions. And then the guy's like, it's just you and me. We're friends, aren't we? We're friends, aren't you and I? Don't you like me? I like you. He goes, like? I only just met you. Tell me what's going on. What do you think? He goes, is it really sexual, Dave? When you come to this conference, I'm going to put my hand on your thigh. I'm going to put my hand on your thigh, and is that sexual harassment? I was like, can he just say? I was like, oh my God! And it just got worse. It went to fucking hell. And this was a huge conference, and there were other things. They also ended up. This conference nominated me. They were having an award for. Atheist of the Year, which was supposed to be a somebody on YouTube or social media who advocates for atheist causes. I look at the first name for Atheist of the Year, and I was like, wow, that's an awesome guy. I know this guy. This is going to be a hard choice. I see the second name. Okay, that's going to be a hard choice. Third name, it's me. And I was just like, wait, what? This is like, how did I don't know how my name got into this happen, to tell you the truth. I will say this honestly. I started to suspect the organization after that. So, and I don't even know if I don't think they even had it, because this just blew up. This was like national news. So I'm just like, I'd like to get David on. And I knew him because I had done his show once. So I called him up and said, would you come on? And he was doing some of the biggest, YouTube channels that were out there. It wasn't really mainstream media, but it was pretty close. So he comes on, and he was great, and we did that, and it was a real help for the show. So I really like the guy. Somehow this rumor got started that I hate the guy, so I just give him a hard fucking time every time I can. And the people, and I was like, oh my God, that Dave guy is here, and he'll put up Dick will put up that bleeding goat, and I'll say, oh, I thought Dave wasn't here, and oh, all of that. And then all of this to tell you one thing, because this does actually come around. So he's, one time I come on, and he's just like, Nick's on. He's like, now I'll never get to talk. And I was just like, listen, Dave, you can talk as much as you like. The more you talk, the better I look. And everybody was, boom. Yeah. And I've got to tell you, I have to be honest, 𝗲𝗲𝐻. That's from 𝗲𝗲𝐻. I got that one from 𝗲𝗲𝐻. That was not original. I got that one from 𝗲𝗲𝐻. That's it. First time I've confessed. But anyways, I like Dave. He ended up writing a book. He wanted someone to just go over it. I went over it for him. Went over a whole bunch of stuff for it. So I really like the guy. But there's this faux thing, and I want to be a little careful with it, because I don't want people to think I actually hate the guy. Because he and I have always gotten along. So I didn't even know he was part of the Shills. I come out of the Shills for the first time. There he is. I was like, oh, Dave. Like, anyways, sorry, long story.
That's great.
So we're going to do a book of 𝗲𝗲𝐻's The more you talk, the better I look. That's going to be one of my favorites.
I like that.
We haven't had him on in too long. I haven't had much of a chance to chat with him either. I keep trying to catch up with him, but genuinely good. You know what the problem is? I've noticed the people I most want to talk with, the people I find most interesting, are usually the ones who are too busy being interesting to want to talk to me. So, I just mean on a social level, it's hard to get a hold of good people. So, you're around a lot, which is not a testament to anything other than it's just I get a chance to chat with you pretty frequently, so I luck out. Let's see if we can add Mowdy and get him in a bit. So, all right. So 3 things. So you had said, what are we going to talk about? And we don't always, just said anything. Oh, Dorgy, we are going to get, at some point you need to get a picture of the dogs and we're going to put them up and we're just going to do like playtime. It'll be just the dogs like playing. I'll get my dog on. I don't know if anyone's seen my dog, or cats every now and then. I close the screen, but maybe I'll get a cat or something.
Yeah, I've seen the cats.
So, but there was a couple of things. So In Time has not covered the Supreme Court decisions, and we've been covering the U.S. Supreme Court decisions. Last year, we covered them extensively, and in my mind, nobody's really commented on this. Nobody sat there and said, "Why?" That's not true. 1 or 2 people pointed out that we haven't covered it, and there's a whole bunch of reasons. There's no one reason we haven't covered it. Part of it is I don't like to cover shit if I'm just talking out my ass, and I usually have to do a deep dive on those. I read the fucking decisions. Anybody who's seen this show before knows I go through, I read the decisions. That takes a lot of work. I usually highlight things, and then we will cover them on this show. We're going to say, okay, this is really what it's saying. These are the arguments that are being made. Here's why. And I didn't have time to do that, and I didn't want to do it half-assed. So I said, okay, so we haven't covered it. Again, first week, girls off from school. They will be going to summer camp. I'm going to have a lot more free time then. I'm still, obviously I'm on the Discord and I'm doing what I can, but wow, there's a lot going on. So, there's a lot. Anyway, so I do apologize. Yeah. It's something I've wanted to do. I shouldn't even apologize because, I don't know. I feel disappointed that we haven't covered that as much as we'd like to. So I figured at a minimum we could talk about that. I think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about. It wasn't as bad as last year, but there's that. Obviously, people want to talk about the Ukraine war. And then there was a doxing issue, which it hadn't crossed my mind that we should talk about it, but I've been all over Twitter talking to people about it. And I think it's a nuanced issue. I completely understand people on the other side. Boy, do I get people on the other side. People seem to think I don't. I was like, no. I really do get it. It must have been very rewarding, and I get the sensation. But having said that, I have a lot of opinions, so I thought we could. So that is the hodgepodge of a meal before us, and I figure we will get through what we can or cannot, but I wanted to leave it up to you. That way, if anything goes wrong, I can say, listen, Lance picked the topics, okay? I was just sitting there going, when this went completely off the rails, summa culpa. Mea maxima culpa. Marvelous. We are on the same page. Having said that, let me be a gracious host and say, what would you like to talk about?
Well, let's get through the Ukrainian situation very briefly. The big news today, Turkey has removed its objections and Sweden is now on track for full membership.
You and I had said that was a 50-50, and I hope it stays. Yeah. But it looks like it's going to stay. So what's your take?
Yeah. A lot of people are saying that the big hurdle was there are what the Turks call terrorists. So in other words, Kurds or political opponents to Erdogan's regime, who have taken refuge in Sweden, and the Turks want them prosecuted for their crimes, in quotes. So the thinking is that the Swedes have agreed that they will prosecute these individuals. Now, how rigorous said prosecution will be, and what evidence will be admitted to prove that they are innocent or guilty, that's open to interpretation. But the consensus seems to be that's what was the sticking point. And once the Swedes gave Turkey a kind of concession, the Turks said, okay, we remove our objections.
Well, and more importantly, I suppose the concession also is to the president, who can say it'll be taken care of, and he can say, don't worry, I've talked to this, and whatever actually happens probably doesn't matter. What matters is that he can say it's happened. Okay.
It's the mission accomplished banner on the bridge of the aircraft carrier.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to have to like meme that and just make
mission
that so we can hit
We're
that.
We're going to be here for another 20 years, but it's mission accomplished.
Now we have another mission, and I'll let you know what that one is as soon as I formulate a exit and an entrance. Well, the entrance, we're already there, so we'll... My mission
I pick up this large pile of shit, and what am I going to do with it now?
George Bush on that aircraft carrier. My mission was to land on an aircraft carrier in a helicopter.
Yes,
with a jumpsuit, flight suit on, and a parachute, so that I could say I almost parachuted onto this carrier. And so mission accomplished, everyone. Here I. Wow. Okay. Well, that's some really good news. I mean, we had talked about Sweden, of all the countries wanting to join, short of Ukraine, of all the ones in the short list right now. That was the only one that, in my view, was a must get, and it was the only one that was in contention.
So having Sweden in NATO is going to do two things. Number one, it allows the Swedes to start selling their equipment, and they have some pretty darn good equipment, to other NATO countries.
Ooh. Because
there were certain restrictions on that. So those would be lifted. The second thing it allows is, additional forces that become accessible. More money into the kitty, probably more support for the Ukrainians. And the big thing is it now solidifies the fact that Russia may be the big fish in the Baltic pond, but there are enough small fish with very sharp teeth that they don't own the pond.
Well, it may be the big fish, but when you add all the other fish together, that pond is getting a lot smaller, and it ain't because of Russia. Okay, I may have taken the analogy a little too far. All right, so
well, I think it's amazing, because if you go back 2 years, if somebody had said, "Yeah, Sweden's going to join NATO," everybody would have laughed at you.
I'd have been one of those people. I'd have been like, Sweden will never join NATO under any set of circumstances.
Oh yeah, and then Vladimir, the brilliant strategist that he is, makes it so untenable for Sweden to say, we can't really be neutral and safe at the same time. We better jump on the bandwagon. It's like, what a colossally stupid strategic blunder.
Well, he probably thought they wouldn't. I mean, no, I'm not sure. I even had I known they were going to invade Ukraine, I'm not sure I would have predicted this.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess there's been some new thoughts on Prigozhin. You've had a new updated, and I got to.
He has more or less disappeared.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him pretty much at all in the past week and a half. So people are speculating that maybe even if he did get to Belarus, he's going to be permanently entrenched there.
Yeah, if he, and he's in St. Petersburg right now, is that right?
I hadn't heard that.
I think the understanding is he's in St. Petersburg and nobody knows how or why, and apparently he's trying to keep it quiet. But in Belarus, they're saying actually right now he's in St. Petersburg, and this would be his first time back since all this happened. So there's wild speculation about that. Now, when this first happened, when
the coup went down, or excuse me, the mutiny went down. When the mutiny went down, the FSB stormed Wagner corporate headquarters, and they were stunned at how much cash was stored in that building. So he may be going back to St. Petersburg to access some of his ready cash.
Well, when this had first happened, I mean, I don't seem to have the mind for the conniving, which it maybe is a compliment. It's sort of like, okay, you know, when it comes to conniving, sorry, I don't know. I've got the experience to fake it. So I can sit there and say, okay, this person's being a dick because that's what people in his position have a tendency to do. But I got to tell you, when this sort of first happened, I saw it very straight. It's sort of like, okay, he's really trying to take over. And you repeatedly said something which was hard for me to swallow. And I couldn't tell if it was just you maybe either playing devil's advocate or saying all of the options, or if you really thought that this was a possibility. But it seems to me like you really thought it was a possibility. And to this day has not been taken off the table, which is that at a minimum, at the start of it, it was actually started by Putin calling up Prigozhin saying, I need a favor. And that this was Prigozhin actually working on behalf of Putin. So could you tell us a little bit about that and how you feel about that theory at this moment?
I still think there is some degree of that went on, but it's not the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happened is there was a conversation between the two of them, and Putin may have expressed or replied to Prigozhin's expression of frustration with Shoigu and Gerasimov in terms of getting proper support for his Wagner's activities. And then Putin might have said something along the lines of, yeah, they're really a pain in my ass too. And so Prigozhin may have thought that was, you know, kind of carte blanche to let's do something to get rid of these two. A bit like the murders of Thomas Becket, where, you know, it's like, will no one rid me of this truculent priest? So, oh yeah, that means we should go kill the Archbishop of Canterbury. You know, he never said kill him. He just said
we'll know. Yeah,
that phrase, and yeah. So I think that may have been at play here, and to me, the giveaway that they were probably semi in cahoots. They may not have known they were, but they were kind of in cahoots. Is that at no time during the entire process did Prigozhin ever say anything critical of Putin himself. All his outrage was directed at the Ministry of Defense and the FSB and the MVD and all of those other organizations, but not at Putin. He's still a quote Putin loyalist.
That was, I remember you had said that, and as the hours were waning on that, I was like, is he gonna? No, I was like, you know, Lance may be onto something, because if you're going to take over a country, but you're not going to criticize the president. I was like, okay. Anyways, I'm sorry. I think I cut you off there.
No, and the other suggestion that may have been the case is both Shoigu and Gerasimov leave Moscow. And if you're going to be fighting for your position, you'd want to stay near the center of power, but they leave. And that suggests that they were kind of afraid that it might be a sanctioned activity. So all that kind of fits into the theory. I'm not saying this was Putin trying to oust them, but I think it was proximate to the cause for why the mutiny went down when and the way it did.
You also suggested, and I mean, I don't know, I had we've talked about the Potemkin village, and we've talked about the fact that Putin always gets a rosy picture, and why, Hitler too. My favorite example: nobody wanted to wake him up during the invasion of Normandy because he was in so much denial too that he'd probably sit there and shoot whoever woke him up, because why are you shooting me for something like this? Our troops will easily repel it. This isn't a big deal, and so nobody knew how to talk to him about bad news. So I always believed at least some of that was going on, but because Putin could read a map, and because he could see what was going on, and because he's actually a bright guy, and he knows that this is how it works because he came up through this system. He's not a cherub in all this. He's been through this. He's done it to people. It's like, how could he really not know? But one of the things that you suggested was that he really didn't have an idea how bad things were at the front, and it wasn't until Prigozhin really talked to him, and then he realized, and that may have changed his view about some things.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, he can read a map, he can see that they're not advancing, they're perhaps being driven back in certain areas, but he still thinks it's a straight-up fight, two armies fighting, and that's what happens. He isn't being told how bad morale is, how many troops are deserting, how many troops are surrendering en masse, that kind of stuff. He isn't told that the troops are, at winter, they don't have winter uniforms, so some of them are freezing to death. They don't have enough food, so they're stealing all from, the civil population there. That kind of stuff doesn't get told to the boss. Mm-hmm. And should somebody tell him that, and it's the first time he's ever heard it, and it's from a source he reasonably trusts, which Prigozhin was, then, it's a bit of an eye-opener.
So, is there any chance Putin maybe looks for a de-escalation ramp, if not an off-ramp? Or is it, well, it doesn't matter what things are really like down there, in for a penny, in for a pound?
Well, part of the problem is if there was a chance that he was going to do that, it would have been done, or would have been easier, I should say, before the mutiny. Because once the mutiny occurred, now he looks weak. Almost regardless of what he does, he looks weak. But he's also made even appear to be weaker because he let Prigozhin go. He didn't immediately arrest and eliminate Shoigu and or Gerasimov. They picked some other guy, Surovikin, who's kind of a nobody, really, but, he was, for a while, the field commander down running the whole Ukrainian operation. But he's not one of the top dogs. So the whole thing is getting kind of weird. So he doesn't look strong because of that, the way he treated all these people at the end of the mutiny. Mm. And if he right now were to suddenly up and say, okay, finally, I'm willing to negotiate on reasonable terms, it just makes him look even weaker. And he's not worried about... Go ahead.
Might also make it look like the reason he's doing it is because Prigozhin actually won, and the person who negotiated almost a surrender was Putin, who said, tell you what, don't remove me from power and I'll end the war, but you leave and that will be the compromise. And so, yeah, it may look, I would assume it would be really bad. What were you going to say?
Well, looking weak, it's not a problem, even though the general populace probably sees him weak and ineffectual because he hasn't won this wonderful war. Excuse me, special military operation.
I mean, come on now. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I gotta obey the rules. Anyway, the general populace may feel that way, but they're not going to do anything. It's not in their nature. As you'll notice, when Prigozhin's convoy went driving past, the crowds are there applauding, kind of thing. And when they come back, nobody's there. Nobody wants to celebrate a defeat, but they don't go into the streets and help Prigozhin. They just stand there and kind of go, yeah, we hate the guy in the Kremlin. Please remove him for us. That's kind of what was going on. The people that really matter about him appearing weak are the ones up near the top where he is. It's the other oligarchs who are looking at the situation saying, well, I'm losing a crap ton of money and bad things are happening, and this buffoon isn't doing anything. And the more he tries to do stuff, the weaker and more ineffectual he becomes. Maybe it's time for him to go away. What do you think, oligarch number 2? Yeah, that sounds reasonable. And once you get enough people talking around that table, sounding one another out, then you get a real plot and a real coup. What we saw was not a coup. It was a mutiny.
Yeah, I call it a coup because I think that's what people most understand it as, but it's hard to find a term for this. But yeah, since it's in the military structure, even mercenaries, it's I think mutiny makes sense. All right, somebody was asking for, I can't drop the live chat in just now, but for the Discord, and the bot may not be up yet on this one. It's just live. It's In Time Show, discord.intimeshow.com. So discord.intimeshow.com, you'll get there. So, and I'll type that one out in a minute for those asking. Hope you guys will join us. There's been a lot going on the Discord. All right, so that, I think that just about covers it. So, what do you expect to see next? Open windows in Prigozhin's future? Either way, I would assume. I mean, if it didn't, even if you were trying to help, that's one of the things that I just want to say. We've talked about Russian culture. That's one of the things that people don't understand about. There's no loyalty for the most part. I mean, everybody feigns loyalty, but they're ready to switch sides wherever the wind goes. The reality is, even if Prigozhin was absolutely loyal, even if this was actually an attempt to help Putin, if it didn't work, he's gone.
Yeah. So what do I think is going to happen next? I don't think we're going to see any real movement on the political diplomatic front, which is where it really matters, until the Ukrainians achieve that decisive breakthrough that we're all waiting for. But once that happens and the front starts rapidly changing and the whole condition looks bad, then I think the army may say enough of this crap and do something about it, or the oligarchs will say enough of this crap and do something about it. That's what's needed, is something to shake the system up and basically validate the reality that everybody knows is real, which is he's weak, he's ineffectual. No progress can be made on this until he's removed.
Wild speculation. Are we talking months, years?
I don't know if I go so far as to say years, but perhaps close to a year before things happen would be my guess.
Not weeks.
Some people have, some experts, and I don't claim to be an expert, some experts have said they expect something to happen before the end of the year. I think that's optimistic.
All right. Well, all right. Well, I think unless there's anything else you can think of, now we are going to have Operator Starsky on tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. So that should be, I was going to say a lot of fun.
And he has a unique, he has a unique viewpoint that really would factor well into this. So he's a little more in tune with the culture and the way the politics in Russia work than we are, I think.
That's a really great point. We should definitely ask him about that. Yep. Let's make sure. I'm going to make sure that we ask him about that tomorrow, because I want to get his perspective on that. I don't always ask. I'm sometimes a little hesitant because I think that he's not really interested or involved in the politics, but that is absolutely not true. And it's like when you talk to him about it, you realize he's very much aware of it.
Yeah, I always fall back on the Clausewitz maxim that war is merely politics carried out through violent means.
Yep.
That's what we're seeing.
Well, so, well, all right, we will definitely make sure to ask him. So that's Starsky, and that will be on In Time, our sister channel, brother channel, the other channel. So that's where that will be tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. The show's already up, so you can go find it and make sure that you've got your notifications on for that one. So, let's see. The other two was that doxing one I wanted to talk about, and the U.S. Supreme Court. Which one interests you more? Which one tickles your fancy?
I'll say let's do the doxing, because honestly, I have not been keeping track of what's going on with the Supreme Court. I'm only peripherally aware of some of the cases that have come down.
All right, I'll bring them up, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't read them, which I usually try to do before coming on. Reading them is no small feat. I can do it. My father was a lawyer. I read briefs. I even helped prepare a brief that he did for the U.S. Supreme Court. So, yeah, I mean, I can do it, but I don't have it's not so much that, I mean, there are lawyers who can just go through it and instantly pick out for me. It's like, okay, I have to read each sentence, figure out what that sentence means and the paragraph means. And, yeah. It's still very much, it's time consuming. Yeah.
Yeah. And the most controversial of the rulings that I'm aware of, it really is something that sounds to me so vague and so almost undefinable that you wonder how they would let this law through, and the fact that somebody's going to countersue and get it overturned. And 3, there wasn't even a dispute. This was kind of a theoretical that started it. So it's almost like it was planned from the beginning as, well, we've got to get this to a court before, opinions change. Even if it gets thrown out, it still sets a quasi precedent.
Yep. All right, so we'll definitely get to that. So this was an interesting, like I said, if I had thought about it much longer. So there was a video that came up. It was a woman on TikTok. And she seemed like a nice enough lady. Never heard of her, but apparently she's got a following. And there was a guy who had been very creepy. He had been following her around. He had, following her around. Let me rephrase that. I should be a little more careful. So I guess it started with some, shit posting, but eventually he got so that he was calling her a dumb fucking bitch and a few other things. This took a process of about a year. And he also got so that he was following her on, so she would leave comments on other videos, and then he would reply to those. Now, I haven't done a deep dive into it. My understanding is he never made any overt threats, but he was certainly being hostile. So she decides to, she goes, looks him up, and now he was using a fake name, real picture, fake name, and she goes through this thing and made a hilarious TikTok about it. She's like, okay, fine. You want my attention? Now you got it. So she goes through to see who he's been liking, see if any of them, and then your background is definitely getting a bit louder there.
I'll mute it while you're talking.
All right. Oh, thank you. No worries. So he ends up going through, she ends up going through like everybody who follows him and that he likes, and she realizes if she goes to the bottom of that list, she's most likely to find the people who liked him first, which would all be friends of his, people he actually knows in real life. Pretty clever. Goes through, finds them, finds the first woman, says, okay, since this guy's a shitheel, let me look up. Finds this woman in a bikini and looks at the comments, and sure enough, he's made a comment. Different name, but same picture. Goes through, tracks down videos that he's done, is able to get his hometown, where he works, all this other stuff, and reverse engineers all of this from the videos that he's posted. He said, well, he's got his camera up while he's driving at one point. She captures one of the road signs, figures out the road sign, figures out, okay, he's a delivery worker, so all this other stuff. and so has released his name, his picture, all his accounts online, and threatened to basically do more. So I've got to tell you, you take a look at it, and in some cases, in some ways, it's hilarious, and in some cases, there's this, well, you know, justice done. But I do have some issues with this, so I sent you the video. I would love to play it for you guys. We were not able to have the time to remove his name from the video, and the only video copy that I have, she speaks his name and gives it, and despite the fact that she has now released all of this information, we have a pretty strict policy about this. We've encountered this kind of thing before, and until enough time has passed that we can clearly say, look, everybody knows who he is, we're not going to do it without the redactions. So we can't show you the video. I do apologize. I know you've seen the video, so what are your thoughts?
Oh boy. There are two issues at play here. One, the guy was an a-hole and probably deserved to have something done to him. Since social media sites are notorious for not doing a damn thing with people that use their offices to harass and even outright harm others, it's kind of forced back on the individual to exercise what I would consider a version of vigilante justice. And I think that was done here. For that, I almost applaud her. However, the other part is the harm a person's online persona, when it is revealed, can do to his real life, his or her real life, is profound. There have been other cases of this where people have been fired from their jobs, their wives or, their spouses of either gender divorce them, kids become estranged, all sorts of stuff. And I think part of the issue is how many people are using false identities online, which makes them feel empowered, which makes them feel invulnerable. And so they do stupid things that they probably in real life would never do. So the question is it this guy's fault that he's an a-hole online? Is it because of that situation that he thinks he can get away with this because of the milieu that he's posting these things in? Or is he just naturally an a-hole who would do this even if it was under his own name? You know, and yeah. So it's like you said, I'm of two minds about it. Honestly, I think once you've been punched, you have a perfect right to punch back. That's the only thing I can say.
I think the difference between yours and my view is going to be more nuanced than that. Oh, do you mind muting again? So I'm torn for the same reason. It's like if the police won't help her, which we know they won't, social media won't help her, which we know they won't. But I actually have a view, which is I don't think, and I've gotten into this, people who've been around in time for a while know that this is my view. I often get pushback on it, and the pushback is salient and not unwarranted. I'm not sure I have an answer, but it still basically remains my view, which is I think for the most part, most of these spaces should actually be, using people with verified names and accounts, because I think we all have a tendency to be worse individuals when the accountability goes down. I'd like to think we're not, but evidence has shown pretty conclusively that we are. And that's what there were many reasons I've always used my real name on social media, but that's one of them, is to keep myself in check. And once or twice, I've created sock accounts. I've created a fake account, sometimes to get behind a block, see what other people are saying, see what's going on. And what I've noticed is if those accounts ever engage in anyone, at first I engage very much like I would ever engage. So much so like, oh, they'll figure out who this is right away because, nobody speaks with as much charity on Twitter. But it doesn't take too long before somebody kind of kicks me in the teeth, or I feel like I've been kicked in the teeth, and I start to get kind of aggressive. I was like, "Ooh, they don't know who I am, so I can say or do whatever I want." I was like, "Ooh, I don't like that feeling. I really don't." So I usually bail at that point, and because that's one of those, if you don't nip that one in the bud, that will fester and it will change who you are. But so I'm actually against. When Facebook said that they're going to start certifying everybody, and you have to use your real name, and plenty of people don't, and people have found a way, but I was like, I think that's almost an absolute good. I don't think we're going to fix social media unless people, for the most part, have to use their real names. The problem is I also do know people who for one reason or another, can't. There are very... And I totally understand that. I mean, I live in an area where we, as we jokingly say in the evening sometime, oh, it's Beirut again. There are so many gun nuts, right-wing types out in the woods here who have little target ranges and fire off a couple hundred rounds at least once a week. These are the kind of people that if you say something critical of them and they find out who you are, they will come and shoot at you. That's the kind of society we live in today, is the prevalence of armed people and the willingness of those armed people to, do stuff is shocking. And honestly, the justice, law enforcement, political system doesn't really want to take that issue on. So we just are forced to live with it. We have to accept that some mental case, and in some cases that's exactly what they are. They are mental patients, and they're running around with, AR-15s. I don't know what to say. Well, it only takes one. It only takes one. And that's, I don't know how to solve that. I think, there are people who I know, if you said that everyone had to use their real name online, and made getting an exception very difficult and reasonably easy to revoke or whatever. I don't know. I know people who could never be online again for various reasons. There's just, so it's like, okay, you're damaging them if you Absolutely. Do that. But having said that, I still believe that the overall damage of the prevalence of anonymity is far greater. And it's made most online spaces toxic. But despite that being my belief, right now, there is an assumption of anonymity to some degree. And so I get, when something like this happens, there are so many consequences that people don't think about. When I have a friend who's got a broken bone, I never ask them how they broke it. I never ask them how they broke that bone, because the one thing I know for a fact is everybody is asking them. And everybody thinks that they're the only one asking. None of them are the only one asking. And if you're the guy with a broken bone, if you've got patience, you got to just keep answering as if it's the first time you've ever been asked this stupid question. So, and then I say to myself, yeah, but for me, it's like this intellectual, I really do want to know. So this is the exception to the, and then you ask. When you dox someone like this, everyone takes it upon themselves to be the ones who somehow are going to make this guy pay, and they think that they're the only one doing it. So what ends up happening is he may be a jerk, he may be a horrible human being, but it's been my experience, having seen this kind of thing a lot and having had friends who've gone through it. The number of people who decide that they're Batman and they're going to intervene and do something to make this guy suffer the penalties, and it may be roughly adequate, whatever it is they choose to do. But if you have 1,000 people choosing to do that, it is not only disproportionate, but I think she in her mind should have the capacity to realize that that could happen. What happens if he's cheated on his wife twice before? He's been caught both times. And his wife came back to him the final time, but she said, if you ever do this again, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill our child, and I'm going to kill myself. Now, that's extreme. Not a lot of people go through that, but it does happen. You have no idea what's going on in this guy's life. And she may see that, and it may be he hasn't cheated again, but she sees that and says, you know what, I'm done. Blows his head off. Was that an appropriate punishment for the crime? Anybody? No, I don't think any reasonable person can say yes. Could she have known that that was going to happen? No, but she could have known that there were consequences beyond her control, because there almost always are. And it's a terrible position for her to be in, because she shouldn't have to look out for the guy. But on the flip side, if you're doing something that you know could, if you're recklessly doing something that could cause harm to somebody else, and the reality is there are now federal laws that are coming out defining what doxing is and saying when you're doxing and saying that these things shouldn't be done, leaving it mostly up to the states to regulate. So while I'm extremely empathetic to her position, and I agree the police are not doing anything, and the social media companies are not going to do anything, the people I've talked to, a few people have suggested, well, she was being threatened. No, I would have found it threatening. Being threatened is another thing. And the problem is when you leave this up to every individual, I have on Twitter, and anybody who's been on Twitter has done this, gone up to somebody that, you know, you have a casual chat with on occasion, maybe gets a little contentious, and said, you know, hey, how's it going? And they say, what the fuck do you mean, how's it going? Oh my God, are you trying to? And then threatens you and then does all this. There's some fucking crazy people out there. So if we normalize that everybody gets to do this, everybody will do this. And it's already weaponized to a degree. And again, you don't know. You don't... There's a story I may talk about. I don't know. I got to think about it. It's a buddy of mine who got in trouble for something. I'll get to that in a minute if I'm going to talk about it. But at any rate, you never know. And I'm aware that it's a shit situation either way. But here's the other thing. There are a few people who said to me, well, she was scared for her safety, and that's why she did it. If she was scared for her safety, I would absolutely have reconsidered doing this. Because if he's an incel fuckhead type, and if he's really threatening her, is this going to be viewed by him as an escalation that needs to be answered? Or is he going to cower back? And I don't think anyone can predict the answer to that. So this, in my view, is dangerous on so many levels. It's also very understandable. This is why we're having it on sort of a nuanced, chat where we get to talk, because I understand her position. I really do.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is the fact that there aren't any strict or official guidelines about how this should be governed. And Congress refuses to act, and so you have an unregulated industry. It's like railroads were before they passed the laws that forced railroads to do things that, assure passenger safety. We're kind of in the same situation here. We're in the infancy of internet protocols of all sorts, and there's no guidelines on how this should be done. Nobody's looking out for safety, and I think that kind of thing needs to be addressed. But Congress is not going to do it because those oil, railroad barons, whatever, they've got enough money to keep the congressman from ever passing anything, which is kind of what happens. And eventually what's going to need to force the process is that there are going to have to be a lot of people killed and injured before Congress finally gets off its lazy, over-conservative ass and does something to fix the problem.
Oh, I think one reason I take this one personally, and I met this guy he was still on the tail end of it. Roasted online. And what had happened was somebody got pissed at him. And that somebody believed that he was having an affair and cheating on his wife. So he did a whole bunch of complaints, dropped them all on Twitter, and said, oh, by the way, he's having an affair. This is the person he's having an affair with. There were a couple of problems with this. First, was he having an affair? Good question. He was married. Neither he nor his wife knew at the time that they got married that she was not interested in men. She thought she was. She was told she was supposed to be, so she married her best friend. And you see the two of them together, and you would think that they're a happily married couple. They are, except for one thing. She's not interested in guys. So they decided either they were going to end the marriage. They had kids. She didn't figure this out until she was much older and they already had kids. And then she's like, I know it's not that something's wrong with me, it's that I'm gay. So either they break up an otherwise very happy home, or they say, you know what, we're going to stay friends. We're going to raise the kids together, but we're each going to satisfy ourselves with somebody else. That was the agreement they had. She was all but married to somebody else who was a friend of the family. The family just brought her along. He didn't have another woman. There was no other. Every now and then he'd find a partner for a short time. She knew about all of it. It was all with her consent. So he had actually been doing nothing wrong. Probably made a few of the mistakes that he ended up getting accused of, but this was the bombshell because his wife hadn't outed herself. Nobody else knew of this arrangement. So either he's cheating, or she has to come clean with the entire living arrangement of the entire family. Her parents didn't know. Nobody else knew. They were hiding this from everybody. Nobody had any idea dropping this. They were like, oh, he's cheating, which, by the way, was, I think, probably a guess. They just said, well, he's around this lady. They got it right. Fine. Except he wasn't cheating. Not to mention what happened to the other woman. A whole bunch of people suffered, from what I can tell, quite a lot. Because somebody was pissed enough to decide, well, and he's cheating, so because he's immoral in all these other ways, makes it okay. Do you know the difference, by the way, between ethics and morals? You may still be muted. I can hear you.
No, I'm not muted. I honestly can't say I do. I mean, I could argue one way or the other, but I'm sure you have the real definition, so I'll just let you educate me.
Most people don't. Allie, damn, the perfect marriage. Married to somebody, but you don't have to have sex with them. Ooh, does my wife watch this show? Let's nobody hook her up with this tonight's episode. All right, love you, sweetie. All right, so morals are what you think is right, what you feel or intuit is right, and sort of your guiding star. Ethics have nothing to do with morals per se. Ethics are a set of guidelines on how to act or behave that presumably over time for some reason is considered moral, but ethics and morals don't always work together. Good example. Lawyers have a code of ethics. This code says that they can never, under any circumstances, betray their client to the prosecution. It doesn't matter what their client has done. The reason is the legal system couldn't function if they did that. If they took it upon themselves to say, well, I know he's guilty, so I'm going to slip a note to the prosecution. If a client cannot talk to their lawyer without fear of being turned in, the lawyer can never represent the client. If you are on trial for murder, and the evidence that you didn't commit murder is that you were robbing a small store somewhere, and you just broke in, stole a couple candy bars, and left. That's what clears you. But you decide not to tell your lawyer that because, oh my God, he may tell the prosecution. No, you have to be able to tell your lawyer what you did do, what you are guilty of, so that you can get good representation. But you won't do that if you think they're going to violate their canon of ethics. The reason most people don't want to be lawyers is because their morals conflict with the canon of ethics for being a lawyer. It's when morals and ethics conflict that we feel really upset about things. That can happen on occasion for doctors too. Doctor says, do no harm. What happens if, would you really work, if you've got, Hitler under the knife and you can save his life, what do you do? This is where ethics and morals have a tendency to conflict. The reason you have a code of ethics is so that if you're in conflict, you have a fallback point that is written, codified. Oh, could you mute yourself again? Sorry, it's getting a little loud again. So the reason to have ethics is so that if there's any moral questions, you know what to fall back on. You fall back on the ethics. So that's it. Difference between ethics and morals. The reason most people don't like lawyers is because their own morals conflict with the lawyers, what the ethical guidelines are for a lawyer. You have ethical guidelines for judges, ethical guidelines for all sorts of things. The ethical guidelines for judges are supposed to make sure they're impartial, but they override those all the fucking time, and that's where we have a whole bunch of our problems. So all that notwithstanding, in general, I go by my morals, but I have a code of ethics, and in general, if I feel like I should violate the ethics, I have to sit back and say, okay, why am I so, doing that? And in my view, doxing is unethical. There is a standard accepted, and it's becoming in a number of countries it's very illegal. In this country, and again, I would rather everybody be known. I think people should use their real names on the internet, but right now they don't. And right now the consensus and the understanding is that there is at least some expectation of privacy. So the consensus is that there is some expectation of privacy. Well, so long as the people who joined had that expectation, even if there are those who are abusing it, which strikes me as fucking most of them, which is why it shouldn't exist, but it does. And so long as it does, and so long as we don't know the consequences of these actions, because as 𝗲𝗲 would say, people lead messy lives. You don't know what's going to happen when you dox someone, and you don't know how many crazy people, somebody may go up and kill him because they think he's a bad idea, and they're trying to, he may go, and he may not, probably won't, many times. The damage goes on behind the scenes, but there's going to be damage, and you're making yourself judge, jury, and executioner. So anyways, morally, there's this huge part of me that says, yeah, she did the right thing. Ethically, I was like, no, period, end of discussion. And I rely on the ethics when I start to get, can't you see that it was causing, she was in this position? It's like, no, we've already agreed. This is it. And as soon as you let her do it, maybe in this case, nothing goes wrong, but for others, yeah. That's a good question. That's a very good question.
Let me paraphrase. You're saying ethics is essentially a set of guidelines or rules. Morals is your feelings on an issue.
Yes.
Is that essentially
roughly
correct?
Yes.
Okay. So for guidelines or rules to be published, somebody has to have established those. They have to be codified in some way, somewhere. Where does that exist for this situation?
I'm actually, there is a good question. Also, I would have a couple of answers. What I'm trying to look up now is, because I've mentioned this before, the federal government was establishing, they had established guidelines, but it was unclear as to how much, how these guidelines could or would be enforced. So I don't know. For me, when I talk about ethics in this particular case, I just mean, for me, I consider it unethical to dox. Regardless of a moral position, I personally consider it unethical to dox. So, so for In Time, we have a number of ethical considerations. Anybody who becomes a mod on In Time has to read, sort of ethical.
I'm not trying to be a contrarian here, okay? But according to what you just said, what you're really saying is doxing is immoral. you're not saying it's unethical. Because for it to be unethical, there would have to be a codified set of rules or guidelines. It could be one that you establish. You could literally have written this down and
Well,
have it, taped on the corner of your computer. But
I think it's a fair, well, and I'm glad you're offering pushback, because I think it's a fair criticism. I mean, for me, I view it as unethical in as much as I have it. There's a good question as to if something is considered an ethical code, does it have to be written down? Or are we talking essentially the difference between, what is it? I wanted to say, I can't think of the ethical views. There's utilitarianism. There's the one I'm thinking of, which is basically you follow certain rules and that's it. And that is essentially a argument from ethics, which is there are certain rules that you don't break. So, okay, you never kill. Okay, so if the idea is you should never kill someone, even if you're not going from the Bible, even if you're not going, because the Bible says thou shalt not kill, but if you're saying, basically there is a rule somewhere, whether it's written down or not, there's a rule, and that rule is you should never kill anyone. Then that is an ethical claim as opposed to a moral one. So if you say, okay, there are nuanced situations and every rule is flexible, that's a discussion of morality. Morality is a sort of in the moment. This is how we decide. Is it better for some people, worse for some people, and we make a moral judgment at any given moment? Or do we say, no, ethically I cannot because. So even if you haven't actually agreed to a set of codified rules, ethics simply is that a set of rules, whether it's codified in your brain or externally on paper. You shall not do this for whatever reason. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but there are always going to be exceptions. So,
yes,
taking your earlier comment, thou shalt not kill. Okay, great. That's a superb ethical statement. I think most people can agree with it. But what happens in a situation where that guy is holding a knife to your wife or your child's throat, and you've got your sidearm that you keep under the pillow to protect your household? You can't kill him because that would be unethical according to the rule. So
yes.
The argument that could be made in the case we're talking about in that context would be, because this guy was so viciously harassing her online, she crossed that ethical boundary herself, and she shot the guy who was threatening the spouse or child. That's what we're talking about.
I agree. But usually when somebody crosses an ethical line, there are consequences. And kind of my point to this is, if we use this to normalize doxing, if we say, well, because we understand how difficult these circumstances were, and the reality is, again, she wasn't getting help and she wasn't going to. This is why we have a jury trial, right? Whenever you break a law, if you run a red light, that's essentially, I don't think I'd go quite so far as to say that's an ethical violation. But let's say you run a red light. It's the closest thing we got. You run a red light. You go before a jury, and you say, well, the reason I ran the red light was because my pregnant wife was in the back, and I was going to the hospital. I did slow down. I checked, but I ran the red light. Usually, people will say, okay, despite the fact that this is a rule that's codified under penalty of, we're going to say that this meets an exception. But in my view, as soon as you violate an ethical standard, you've now inverted the essentially the burden of proof. You now have to demonstrate that there was cause to do so. So it's no longer innocent until proven guilty. No, you've now done something wrong. You have to find a positive justification for that. And in my view, what she did here has, I guess for me,
the only issue I would have is, in the case of running that red light, I know I'm playing devil's advocate to an extent by taking your examples and throwing them back in your face. But when you run that red light, you're a violation of a standard.
Mm.
There is an organization in place to enforce said standard, and there is also another organization in place to apply penalties for your violating it. Either of those elements can make a decision that your case warrants an exception. We do not have that on these social media platforms. Nobody's enforcing it. Until you get the police and the judges in on running an internet situation, and I mean that kind of metaphorically, if you will. I'm not saying actual policemen and actual judges.
I know what you mean.
Somebody who's enforcing standards, you're relying on vigilante justice, frontier justice, whatever you want to call it, because there are no damn rules.
No, I think that's a fair objection. I think that's a fair objection. So I will have to think about that. No. Can we? Did I just grant you a point? Hold on. Is there hold on. Is the instant replay on here? Can I just delete the last 30 seconds? Let's just see. No. Okay. We'll cut it. We'll clear it in post. No, I think that's a very good point. And the problem is, I mean, for me, it feels like a social construct. But if it's just a social construct, I don't know how you can defend it. So I think there's that problem. The general consensus is that, private accounts online, and I know, I looked up, I haven't been able to find it. I got to find what the United States government has said about doxing. It's weak tea, but it is there. So I'll look up on it. I think you bring up a very good point. The reality is they're in the Wild West, and you can't just expect people who are there not to defend themselves.
Yeah, but
it's a shit situation all around. Yeah.
Yeah. The flip side. There's a guy in our Discord discussion groups about Ukraine who keeps posting stuff that I find, I won't say offensive, but highly annoying. I've just decided I'm going to ignore him. I'm going to stop responding to anything he says. And you have that. I have that option because I am not an internet celebrity, a person like you. This is something you do. I'm a buddy that you invite into your house to sit on the chair and bullshit while the football game's on.
Yeah.
So I can get away with that, but a person who depends to some degree or another on their internet presence for something that's important to them, be it actual financial reward or something else, it doesn't really matter, but it's something that's important to them personally. They can't do that. They can't afford to ignore the troll. They have no option but to respond.
Yeah, it does. I think you're right. I think it does change things. I'm not sure. I mean, my life got a lot better when I've gotten better about learning to ignore trolls and to ignore criticism. That's difficult for me. Growing up. So the kind of conversation you and I are having now, very similar to what would happen in my family, which is honest, heartfelt, loving criticism, saying, okay, here's what I see wrong with what you're saying and all this other stuff. So I'm sort of used to that in sort of just daily, that's it, every day. And so I kind of assume when someone starts to criticize me, like, oh, they're a buddy. Believe it or not, that's actually the first thought that crosses my mind. Is like, oh, they really kind of want to help and they want to make me a better person. So they're telling me. And so I start to say, well, and then I'll engage it honestly. And then it turns out, no, they just want to shit on me. I was like, why are you yelling at me? Wait, what's going on, dude? It's like, I'm trying to tell you I fucking hate you. Wait, why? I just told you why.
Yeah, there's a difference between being somebody who's on the other side of a debate and simply being an obstructionist who is going to do nothing but argue to frustrate you.
Yeah, I'm the worst person you have ever met at identifying that former class. I am really not good at it. And I've learned to take that a little bit in stride, to realize that that's not quite as charming as I used to think it was. But I'm also somewhat limited in how good I can get at improving it. But no, I think you brought up some good points. Well, this is what I wanted to bounce this off of you. So I think you've had some I think you brought up some good points worth discussing. I think you're right. It is also much more the Wild West, and I keep forgetting that. It's amazing, some of the things. Well, I think even when people know who they are, it's like social media shows us the worst in ourselves, from what I can tell. Sometimes it's the best. More often than not, it's the worst. When what was it? I wasn't thinking this example first, but that woman whose daughter lost out in a cheerleading competition, so she got a fake account and started, harassing the girl who actually won, until that girl committed suicide. But that in that case, there was an anonymous account used, but that kind of thing happens all the time, and it's not anonymous accounts. It's the brutality that, even just on a day-to-day level, that I'm not looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to. So I've often heard it said that men are more cruel than women. I've seen absolutely no evidence of that anywhere. I know why it looks that way. It's, you've seen guys pull wings off a firefly at summer camp and just watch it suffer. And I've seen that. But I've also seen high school girls deliberately inflict some of the most horrendous suffering on other human beings, to the point where, they'll commit suicide or this or that. It's like, don't tell me guys are more cruel than women. It would just go about it very, very differently. But
there's physical cruelty, and then there's psychological or emotional cruelty. Some people will tell you, oh yeah, but the latter, psychological, emotional, you can recover from that as opposed to physical. And I think healing from any wound takes a lot of time and a lot of expense. And I don't just mean money, I mean that expense of the impact it has on your life going forward from that point.
I think you're absolutely right, and yeah, I don't think there is actually much difference. The people who've been psychologically tortured from childhood never recover, and anyone who's received, and there are people who've received beatings that from which they don't ever recover. It doesn't, one way or another. Brutality is an interesting thing. I think you're, for obvious reasons, more experienced with it than I. What we see in our Discord when we have because we have a separate channel, as you know, for Not Suited for Work Ukraine, and sometimes that channel gets pretty brutal. Yeah, we're closer to apes than we like to admit, I think is the problem. But anyways, I think you brought up. I think you brought up some good points. I'm gonna think about it. There was something about, and you know what? Maybe it may in part. I mean, so I first joined like online communities like 3 or 4 years ago. I haven't been doing this nearly as much as it seems, and I didn't know what was acceptable and what wasn't. And I joined the people I made friends with at first were like, "Oh yeah, doxing's perfectly acceptable. It's perfectly fine." And something about it sort of felt wrong, but I was like, "Well, everyone seems to be doing it, and this and that." And maybe in part as a rebellion against that, and also because of what I've seen it do to some people, because that's the other side, which is I've seen people suffer it. I haven't had any serious bouts with it myself, in part because I use my real name, but I've had threats and I've had people release my address, which, can be gotten. And it's like, okay, I've got a family, it's sort of. So I think that's as somebody who is in the spotlight and is aware of what can happen when information that shouldn't get released, either because it's nuanced or it's just private. It's not a secret. It's private. The, family I told you about earlier, the fact that, she and he weren't actually, they were married, but they weren't, actually sleeping together, and they could each go off with each other. That's private. It's not a secret, but it's private. And it's the other one, and I hesitate to mention this, but there was a legal case I saw a while back that got very contentious on Twitter. And the name of the lawyer was on the docket. And so everybody started calling the lawyer. Just took this as a regular. And they're getting slammed from people who know nothing about the law, and have just taken it upon themselves to decide who's right, who's wrong, and to attack the lawyer. And it took 4 days until they realized it wasn't the lawyer. They were calling somebody else who had the same name and lived in the same fucking town. By some coincidence, they got the wrong one. And true story, I was fucking there. And it's just like, well, aren't I glad that we have all of these people around to take care of justice for me? I'm aware of the justice. I'm very aware of the
faults. Yeah, and how do you say, system. I'm sorry for doing something like that? You know, it's meaningless. It's an empty phrase because you can't ever restore that person's level of, I don't know, calmness and surety and safety. They feel they've been violated because you're sitting there calling them at all hours of the day and night and screaming obscenities on the phone at them.
Yep.
That's, you know, and 10 to 1, 90% of the people doing it didn't give a damn that they did it to the wrong person.
Probably true too. And there was a kind of a mea culpa afterwards. The guys were like, "Oh well, you shouldn't have called, even if it was the right person, but it was the wrong person. So please stop calling." But even that, I would have been fucking horrified if I'd been responsible for that. I would have been fucking horrified. You would have seen like a 3-hour stream, me saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe what I've done," and bringing other people on to explain why it was that bad. So it's not just me talking. It's people who are sitting there going, "Yeah, Nick, this is why you shouldn't have fucking done it. This was why it was a really bad idea." I was like, "Okay, tell me." So let's unpack it. And I don't know. Sorry, now I'm just blathering. It's just, I think what happens is everybody leads such a complicated life. I think it was Emerson Rand. Wow, I can't get his full name. Why can't I remember his name?
Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Thank you. Ralph Waldo Emerson. That is correct. If we could read the secret lives of our enemies, we would find in there enough sorrow to disarm all hostility. I wish that were true. There's such a thing as psychopaths. There's the second book I wrote, which I don't know. I know you read the first one, so my condolences. You obviously have a man of a lot of patience. But the second one was a biography of a prison psychologist. And in order to do this, I had to interview some of his patients. This included a guy who was in jail for 18 murders. I think I told you this. I still have the highest on Quora. If you go onto Quora and say, what's the scariest thing a patient has ever told you as a psychologist, my answer is number 1, and I'm not even a psychologist. I'm just like, this is, on a scale of 1 to 10 of all the things I've heard, this is a 7, and it's as high as I'm willing to go. And there were people trying to bring that one down. I said, you cannot post that on here. It's like, it's an intellectual forum, you asked, and this was still only a 7. These were the most horrific human beings. Psychopaths were just terrible. So no, Ralph Waldo Emerson isn't always 100% correct, but for the most part, 90% of everybody you've ever met is fighting a war you know nothing about.
Very true.
Oh dear. Okay, I suspect I may have dominated, especially in that last one, a little bit. Apologies.
No, okay.
Any other thoughts?
I keep muting myself here. So
okay.
Yeah, let's. If you think we have time, let's move on to the Supreme Court issue.
Let's do that. Sounds good. Yeah, we got time. So let's. Oh God, the Supreme Court. So the United States has a very big problem. It's got something called the Supreme Court. That's it. I'm just gonna say it. Wow. So everybody knows last year was absolutely insane. Roe v. Wade was gutted. A whole bunch of other decisions. We covered them all. I don't remember all of them. I'm now sort of in Ukraine mode. So I'm going to have to refamiliarize myself with the shenanigans of the U.S. Supreme Court. They upheld... I don't actually remember if it's upholding or overturning, but what they basically said was, I want to discuss the least consequential one. No, actually, it's probably more. I'm going to discuss the most consequential one that nobody cares about first. We'll get that one done and out of the way. And that was that states' legislatures do not exclusively draw the lines without consultation of the court. That one's just interesting to me. I was about 90% sure that they would rule the way they did. Everybody was terrified that they'd rule the other way, and they should have ruled the other way based on their own, speaking of ethics or values, their own code of how they describe what they see as the Constitution. They say they are strict interpretationalists, or not strict, dear Lord, all of a sudden my brain. It's basically, if it's not written in the Constitution, you cannot interpret it. So you shouldn't put anything else in.
Strict constitutionalists.
I think that's the word I'm looking for. My brain is just misfiring all of a sudden. So, okay, if that's true, the Constitution is crystal clear in the written language. The state legislatures get to determine how elections are held in a state. Now, this is extraordinarily important on the federal level because it's the way you know that Trump actually lost the election. It's because the federal government doesn't run the elections. It's all of the states. And so he'd have to have had conspiracies in all 7 states that nobody knows, most of the states Republican anyway, that all the evidence shows didn't happen. It would have had to have happened in all of those places without the federal government interfering because they can't. So, yeah, I'm sure that happened. At any rate, so the key was gerrymandering. It was the redrawing of districts so that you could, basically, if you were already in power, you could pick the voters you wanted and give all the other voters to somebody else and make it such that you could, originalists. Thank you, Porpoise. That was, yeah, they're the originalists. Thank you, Porpoise. Porpoise just sent me a DM, and that's yes, that is correct. Thank you. So the gerrymandering is already bad enough. The idea was, can judges say, no, this map disenfranchises people, redraw it? According to the Constitution, they can't. They can't, period. End of discussion. That's the only way to read the Constitution. Do I think that that's what the Founding Fathers meant? No. I think they, obviously, everything, this was argued. Checks and balances, always, across the board. That's what was argued. That is obviously correct. But if you're an originalist, that's not what's in there. The court should have ruled the other way if they actually believed what they say they believe. So in my view, this is important for 2 reasons. One, yeah. It's the final proof. They don't, because when it came out, here, judges, according to the Constitution, which you guys say can't be interpreted, according to the strictest interpretation of the Constitution, you guys have no say in elections at the state level. What they should have done was say, oh, you're right. And instead they said, oh, no, you're not cutting us out of that piece of the pie. And that's what they said. Thank God it happened to be the right decision, because if they had gone the other way, which was a possibility, because I was like, if they follow their own ethics, speaking of, if they follow their own ethics, they're going to go the other way. But I was like, I don't think so, because I think they care about their own power more. They're going to do the right thing here and say, no, judges can throw out election maps. Now that judges can do that, you can fight gerrymandering. If they hadn't done that, I think that would have been the final nail in the coffin for the United States. And the reason is because you would now get in any state where one color dominates, blue or red, they would be able to redraw the maps. There would be no way to appeal the maps. And all of a sudden, every Democrat in southern states their votes would mean nothing, and vice versa in northern states. And you would literally, there'd be a mass exodus one way or the other. That's at least what, do you think that's too cynical an interpretation of what would have happened if they had voted the other way?
I think that's exactly what it would have happened. And that's why the ruling is important. It's surprising that they did go the way they did. Because the 6-3 split in the court, you definitely expect it to go the other direction.
Yeah, so I think that was actually the most important ruling. I know that wasn't the most important for most people in their day-to-day lives. We're going to talk about the other rulings. That was the most important, because if that had happened, I don't see the United States as a country surviving it in one piece. I don't. And maybe it's not supposed to. I don't know. But right now, I'm hoping that we can all come together and fix these problems. So, all right. Tell me about the next one. You know what the next one is, the fictitious, the imagined case one. What do you know about it? I know this isn't your and you've...
Okay, so here's my uninformed view of the situation, is that a web designer filed a case, and to put this very clearly, the web designer has never actually had a customer, let alone done a design that was for a customer. If they got published, that they objected to, which would have caused this case. This was purely a theoretical situation. They contend that because a web creation that they would put up was I can't remember the words, creative expression of themselves, that they could not be governed by regulation saying that if they didn't want to do a gay wedding invitation, that it was okay for them to do that. And the court agreed and said, yep, you're right. There is no way that the law can compel the artistic or creative expression of a person.
All right. That is, to the best of my understanding, what happened. Well, no, let me rephrase that. How could you possibly think that's what happened? Gorsuch was clear. He doesn't answer hypotheticals. Every one of these justices, before getting on the bench, and I mean everyone, was asked, how would you answer if you got Roe v. Wade?
Liars,
and they all said, yeah, they said they don't do hypotheticals. No, I think you misunderstood. This can't be a hypothetical. It just doesn't make sense unless there's no integrity in the court, which, oh, hold on, my phone's going off. Oh, I got DMs from I've got DMs from every human being I've ever met saying there's no integrity in the court. Yeah. Okay. So I guess there's no integrity. Oh my God, what's his name? Chief Justice. No, you'd think. Roberts is running around. And he's really, at first it looked like he maybe had a little sense to him, and I'm talking a little ways back now, mind you, and that he was aware that the court was getting away from him, and he was going to go down as on the southern side of the list of the best Supreme Court chiefs, and it looked like he was maybe going to try to do it.
Digging for bottom.
And now he's in denial. He was just like, nobody can possibly say that this isn't an honest Supreme Court because by definition, everything we do is honest. Just by definition. I was just like, wow. Okay. And then there's Congress.
It's on fire. It's not on fire because I said that's not a fire.
Yeah.
Ludicrous idiots.
Wow. And he's become unhinged. He doesn't, it's like him in reality, just like, listen, it's been nice knowing your reality, but it's clearly not working for each other. So I'm going to go find someone else. Have fun. Wow. Yeah. So that's Roberts. Thomas is his own train wreck. Speaking of a fair and just world, the amount, I mean, wow.
The ruling that came down on this particular case to me is so ludicrous because it's unenforceable. So now effectively you're saying that a person who is a musician and goes into a tavern and sings a song can demand that certain people in the tavern are ejected because they don't like their race or their gender or their political beliefs or whatever, because this is my artistic expression and you can't interfere with it. You know, it's so nebulous because they don't define what is that creative expression.
I worked as a cashier once at a major supermarket chain. In high school, I was working as a cashier. And I found, as a cashier, supermarkets to be very creative. You have to know where to put all of the supplies, and where, you always want to make sure that the candy is in the back or at the aisles. If it's in the back and with the milk, then when the parents are going to, and there's a lot of creativity in this, and the really creative types do well. So I think going forward, all supermarkets should ban anybody who is a white nationalist, looks like a white nationalist, or could possibly be a white nationalist, just to err on the side of caution, because, hey, it's a creative job, and, it's nationalists around makes it really hard to stack toilet paper. But,
well, I mean, you're being deliberately absurd on that, and I understand, but I look at it as a case more as if I own a restaurant, because cooking is a creative expression. If I'm the fry cook behind there and I just decide when somebody walks in that they're upsetting me and because of who and what they are, and I can't cook to my fullest ability, they should leave. They cannot be served in my restaurant.
Well,
immediately once you open that can of worms, by extension, you're opening up everything.
Well, and it's every other can of worms. I mean,
You can't live in my neighborhood. Can't go to my school. That's a creative expression.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
No worries. No, I'm glad. No, you're passionate about this. I was the one who was going off on the last one, so I'm glad. I think you've got an excellent point. And that can of worms goes in so many directions too, because yes, and as a programmer, I believe that coding is a form of art. Having said that, I think you can make the same argument about engineering or any number of other things. And if you're going to make that argument and let that one extend, then yeah, it extends the exact same way as for engineering and everything else. But even if you don't, the problem is, okay, a web designer is in essence a form of engineer. And while there is a creative aspect, you don't get to make up code, right? I mean, you can do code creatively, you can do it elegantly, you can do something that's faster than the next. I mean, that's the guys at Google were extraordinarily creative with code and what they did, but nobody thinks it's not code. So does Google get to say, well, we're going to only let certain people use our search engine if they meet whatever criteria based on race, color, or political affiliation, whatever, pick. I don't see how you could say no to that at this point if a web engineer can go this far. It's not that different. Or is it just the color aspects and aesthetic of it? Okay, so can this web developer be forced to build the whole website, but they can't put in any color or do anything like that and have somebody else? And I don't think they're willing to parse it out that way. So I think it's a huge Pandora's box. I am close to a free speech absolutist for any number of reasons, but this one obviously has a great deal of problems associated with it. And the question is, okay, where does it, if this is really true, most things involve personal expression in some way or another. Even hiring someone for a job, you have to use intuition. Well, if your intuition is telling you, well, hey, he's a black guy from a certain neighborhood, are you permitted to say that? We've already clearly established no. Well, wait a minute. That doesn't strike me as actually as far as you may think. You think I'm too far on a ledge here? Or do you think that's at least a defensible argument that those two are at least related?
I think you're right. I think those are related. There's so many weird nuances and interpretations that can be applied here that I don't see how this particular ruling is even remotely defensible. I mean, all it's going to take is one or two people looking at it and saying, okay, we're going to do this, and start applying that in the other direction against the right. And they're all going to go ape shit, and they're going to say, well, your Supreme Court said we can do this.
Well, the interesting thing though is the gay wedding cake. Gay wedding cakes. I just realized I said I'm getting tired. I'm no longer properly. I've never seen a gay wedding cake that's gay, but
electronic wedding invitation.
the bakers who decided they weren't going to bake a wedding cake for a gay couple. And as I recall, that one had flipped over, that had landed on the other side, which said they have to, which honestly, I'm also slightly ambivalent about, because I do get that, okay, if you've got, religious practices, that can be an issue for you. But unfortunately, if we're going to live in a free society, that's a whole nother long answer is you're going to have to find another line of work if that's going to be prohibitive for you. You really can't discriminate like that. But at any rate, hold on. So what I smelled, did somebody hit a skunk outside or what the? Oh, shit, Dick's in the live chat. Hey, Dick, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah, he's gonna. Dick, I will tell you this. So, Dick sent me, and I just had it. It's awfully. Let it never be said that Dick is not a sweetheart. He is holy shit. So he first of all got himself some really nice gear, and when you're talking next, I'll go find it. He got himself some really nice gear. His older gear is still much better than mine. And he sent it to me, so it arrived earlier today. I'm actually using the Phantom Power unit. My other unit had Phantom Power, but it came in off the USB. I'm not convinced it was very strong, so I'm using his external, and then still going to mine because I was setting it up and all that other stuff. But I'll show it to you. It was awfully nice of him. It was just a sweetheart thing, He had old equipment that for me is still better than what I got. So thank you, Dick. Hopefully we're going to set that up either this week or at some point coming up soon. I've already started using it, so good to see you, Dick. I'm still going to make really nasty comments when you come into the live chat because, what else can I mean, really, I can't have people thinking that we get along. So good to see you, Dick. Thank you for showing up. So where were we anyway? I don't really, okay, so we're talking about, the gay wedding cakes. I don't know. I'm sympathetic to if you have a business, you want to serve who you want to serve, but there's a fucking million problems with that, and that's not, so, and I'm not ready to go down that rabbit hole, so that's one, I'm just not going to defend that statement right now, but, if we had not been enforcing, anti-bigotry laws in businesses for the last 50 years, we would still be in the 50s. We would still be in the 50s. And I'm sorry that human beings need to have an effective...
Still be living in Jim Crow.
Yeah. Yep. And the reality is we are in a much better society for fucking everybody. This is the other thing. My father told me this when I was a kid. I think I was 7 years old the first time he ever said this. And learning and understanding this phrase was amazing. This is my father. I mean, he grew up a generation before me, and he laughed his ass off. He's just like, I can never understand why men are so stupid as to oppose equal rights for women. Because you want to know something, the best thing that ever happened to men in this country, equal rights for women. He goes, it's good for everybody across the board. You have to be a fucking idiot not to see it. And it always made some intuitive sense, but it wasn't until I really started looking at it going, guys, what the fuck are you thinking? Please don't put me in charge of this. This is a really bad idea. Anyways,
and yet there are people on the right who are saying that law should be repealed. That amendment should be withdrawn.
Oh, the ERA or the 14th or...
Yeah, women can vote.
Oh yeah. I've still heard that. I've still heard that. I believe at this point the only way to hold that position is to believe in a higher power that's told you that that's the position. Because I don't think you can do that and have a brain that's connected to your ears, or just the ego. And we all have a healthy ego. There's any number of reasons for having a healthy ego. The biggest one is you're alive, right? I mean, the reality is we've all seen people who we've all had friends die, we've all had family members die, but you haven't. You're the hero of your story, and everybody on screen and everyone in the movies, everyone on in books, they are the heroes of their own. They're the heroes of whatever you're watching, and you're the hero of your own story. So that means you're smarter than everybody else, you're better than everybody else, and we just sort of naturally have a tendency to think this way. Yeah, it looks like my camera's glitching out. It's the wrong camera. I'll try to work on that. And so you have a natural tendency to think that you must be superior to everybody else because you're the only person you actually know. You're the only person you experience. You are connected to yourself in a way you're not to everybody else. That means inherently you are different and even subconsciously necessarily in some way superior. This is solipsism all works off of this shit. So I get it. And if you then read a book that says, well, you're a white guy and white guys have been told by God that, well, even though Jesus wasn't a white guy, we'll pretend he was and you get to be like Jesus. And yeah, that's very intoxicating and I understand wanting to do that. But holy shit, it's toxic. And the only success we've had in the last 400 years has been in strict opposition to that kind of thinking. At least that may be a little one-sided, I guess, but that's my view. I don't think. I think the more distance we put ourselves from religion, the more successful we've been, and I don't think there's any grounds for repealing equal rights, but for religion. Any thoughts?
No, I agree with you. The trouble is that a significant number of the people on that side of the aisle have the firm belief that this is a Christian nation and all of their interpretation of the Bible should be encoded into civil law and enforced rigorously. Now, understand they're not saying everything in the Bible, they're just saying the passages that they like to personally select that echo their views of what they want in society. But that's the mindset of the people we're facing. And that's obviously a problem. I've heard not just don't let women vote, repeal the slavery laws and reinstitute slavery and that kind of stuff being proposed. I'm assuming it's at least semi-seriously, not a facetious statement, but predictably, all of these outrageous proposals are coming from one side of the political aisle. And that tells you how screwed up things are.
Well, I did an interview not that long ago. I don't know when it's going to come out. I'll put it on the Discord when it does. But I was asked about this, what caused most of this, and I actually argued that it was the Interstate Commerce Clause. And here's why. I have noted with some alarm that up until now, the left had been getting a little full of itself and saying, well, we're always right. Everybody who opposes us must necessarily be racist. They're wrong on all of these levels. And there's varying degrees of truth to that statement, but I don't think it helps the discussion any. And I think what happens is when you have victory after victory after victory, the other side starts to feel dehumanized. They're not a person anymore. And you have to be a little careful of that even with your opponents. And I remember when we passed universal health care, Obamacare, I worked on the Obama campaign. I started working on his campaign, as you know, when he was polling at 0.5 among Democrats. I knocked on doors. I'd like to talk to you about Barack Obama. They're like, oh, Barama who? Bananarama? Wait, what? So that's when I joined. I was all for Obamacare, and I still am. But I remember Jim Boehner on the floor of the House going, hell no, you can't, hell no, you can't. And I was laughing my ass off. I thought he was having a stroke. I was like, what kind of fucking idiot? You've lost. You've lost, as you deserved to do. We dragged you kicking and screaming into the 21st century. And then I realized who he was talking to. It wasn't me. It wasn't anyone in Congress, because he knew they all knew that it was over. But he was thinking to the next election, and he was thinking to the people who felt that right or wrong, the liberals had said what I just said, which is, you guys are too stupid to understand why healthcare is important, and so we're just going to force you to take it. And part of it is their fault. They don't want to become informed on it. Part of it is because they're listening to a news organization that cynically turns them against policies that are actually good for us and completely undermine the ability to have a rational conversation and all this. There's a lot of reasons. But nonetheless, then when somebody comes along whose only qualification is that he pisses off the left, they all vote for him. And the reason why is it's the first time somebody has made them feel unashamed to be who they are. And for a huge swath of them, that's actually a good thing. That's great. But it also brings along the ones even further at the extreme, where it's like, I'm not afraid to be a white supremacist anymore. I'm not afraid to be. And so and I think the left got a little too full of itself and got a little too preachy and a little less compassionate. I think conservatives are actually, for the most part, deserving of compassion just as much as anybody on the left that we talk about. And anyways, that notwithstanding, I think that's a huge part of why they have gained so much power and amassed and gone where they are. That's my position, assuming that there's a modicum of truth to that. Is this a pendulum? Is this something that's going to swing the other way? If so, how long? Was this predictable? The left has actually had a large number of successes for a long time. I didn't realize how well we had done until it started getting rolled back. Does this continue? Yeah. Does it swing the other way? What happens?
I think it probably will continue as it did, because the social structure of the country is changing. The demographics of the country are changing. And it's an inexorable tide that's slowly shifting in one direction. And as angry and hard as the other side pushes at that tide, you can't stop the tide. It's still going to come up. So I think, it'll take a lot longer than most of us, or many of us, want. But I think in the end, all of those changes that people are talking about that they want will actually get enacted. But how long it takes, that's a good question. And how much regression there is at various points probably will dismay a lot of people.
The long history of ARC may be slow, but it bends towards justice.
Yep, exactly.
So, anything give you, I gotta say, for me, I'm gonna steal this one. I'm gonna poach this one. This will probably be yours. For me, it's Sweden. Sweden getting into NATO is, and the more we work with the rest of the world and the bigger NATO grows, the harder it is for vile ideologies to stay away from the light, because other countries shine that light to us as much as we do to them. So I like that one. Anything recently give you optimism for the future? We had these Supreme Court rulings, although one of them gives me optimism. We talked about it for the wrong fucking reason. It's like, holy shit, even when they do the right thing, it's for the wrong goddamn reason. But okay. Anything give you optimism about the Supreme Court, about the Ukraine future, anything like that?
Yeah, I think Ukraine, again, slow but steady. They're still advancing. It's not dramatic, which is what everybody wants to see, but it will eventually get where it's going. The Supreme Court, eventually old farts are going to die off or retire, and assuming that the demographics continue to work in the left's favor, then you're going to not see that many more opportunities for Republicans to get moved into the court. There'll be setbacks, absolutely. I think over the long run, that's what's going to happen.
All right. Well, Lance, thank you very much for joining me. I always love these. It's great to be able to decompress and shoot the shit. And thank you very much for the pushback. I think I want to be able to have these discussions, and I think you brought up some very good points. So, Titan, did you take the timestamps on those so that I can just clip those out next time yeah. All right, so it's going to sound like I was right about everything, and I never got anything wrong. Perfect. Okay, we'll just edit that. No, he won't know. No, I'll turn my mic back on a sec. It's off. He can't hear that. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so as I was saying, thank you so much. I know I'm funnier. I am a legend of comedy in my own mind. Oh, we have to have the appearance of the Dorg. Hello. That's a gorgeous. Okay, we are gonna. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna white box you here for this. Here you go. Everyone needs to see that. Oh. Wife wants to get another one. I'd love to. Never had 2 dogs. We've had more cats, and we lost a couple of cats. I think I'm
trying
also
to calm him down because he and the other guy are getting at each other right now.
The wife wants another dog. The kids want another dog, and I'm just like, I don't think I can handle one more responsibility in life. I think I have really. Does this look put together to you? Does this look like a guy who should have the responsibility of 1 dog, let alone 2 cats, a dog, a missing link, and 2 children? Oh, Jailer. All right, thank you. So you will be joining us, I take it, for tomorrow, 3 p.m. with Eastern. 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Operator Starsky.
I will.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to that. I hope you guys all will join us for that. That is going to be on In Time. That is our brother channel. We now have all of that shenanigans. The simulcasting is done. Thank God for all of that. That will from now on just be on that channel. It's going to be a lot easier for everyone. But everyone listening to this, I know because I saw the numbers. Everybody listening to this really helped us out and joined and supported it. And so that's why it worked. So thank you guys very much. It makes our lives a lot easier. So we will see all of you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, Lance. It was great chatting with you as always. And Dick in the live chat, I will once say thank you very much, Dick. It's absolutely thank you, and thank you to Dick, who's been really been helping out with the mics and giving me a lot of good advice. And we've been talking about some shit in the background, so that's been very helpful. And I will hopefully be able to join him when he's got Starsky on Saturday. They always have Starsky on Saturday. I get to chat with Starsky twice, once on In Time, once on the Shills. That's always a lot of fun, and there's a lot. They have a lot of fun over there. It's a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys will join that. You can find him on our Discord. I will be on our Discord. We'll also be have a link to that show on the Discord and tomorrow. And you can find Lance there too. Lance is happy to answer questions, and he's been really helping us out a lot with the Ukraine, for which I appreciate that you're always there to be a sounding board. So thank you very much for that. So with that said, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, for Operator Starsky's update on Ukraine. Have a good night, all.